listening to the outtakes in advance of the webinar.
At least the audio is working. Okay.
For those who love outtakes, you'll also hear some dogs barking. That is indicative of webinars in 2020.
Working from home.
Yes.
We have a question already about receiving the program slides after the presentation. For those of you already listening, yes, you will be able to see the slides as well as hear the audio on our website, agelesslivingcollaborative.org. Again, agelesslivingcollaborative.org is the website. You can listen to previous webinars as well as today's webinar and look at any art involved in each one of them.
Okay.
I think it's time.
Good.
Welcome to Senior Living 101. It's a three-part series. We hope to address senior living design questions from specifications to lingo, do some show and tell, and also answer questions that people will have regarding senior living. Specifically, today we will cover independent living and assisted living. I'd like to take a moment to introduce today's panel. We have David Ashen from Dash Design, Kevin Swanson, Columbia Pacific Advisors, Alicia Jones, Principal, Founder of West End Interiors, Laura Busalacci from Brookdale Senior Living, Director of Interior Services. I'm Phoebe Stein. I'll be moderating today's webinar. I'm President of Olive Presents and co-founder with David Ashen of Ageless Living Collaborative. Without much ado, we're going to move into the program. And we're going to start by really looking at a photo of an upscale hotel library and a senior living community library. We wanted to start here because we wanted to really draw attention to some of the similarities and the differences. And we know a lot of hospitality folks are on the webinar today and probably want to learn a lot more about senior living as it is a thriving, booming industry. And we're going to start off with asking probably the quintessential question for senior living, which is very different than that of hospitality, and that is, whose home is it? That's a question that is often asked in the industry and a favorite of our panelist, Kevin Swanson. So Kevin, please kick it off for us.
Well, it's a really, really good question. You know, over the last couple of years that we've been presenting about the hospitality design moving into the senior living realm, let's say, we want to be able to bring those elements into senior living, but we do need to define exactly who is living there. This is a home. This is our seniors' home. It is not necessarily a place that they come to have a 3 or 2 day experience. This is some place that they will probably spend the rest of their lives in. And so it's an important aspect to realize this is a home and not necessarily a place of an experience. And on top of that, though, this is sort of a little bit of a twist to it, is that you also have an operations or a company that runs this, and that this is also something that to make money on. And so you want to be able to create a home for our seniors, yet you also kind of want to fulfill the needs of the operator and or of the developer or the ownership of the building. So working together with those two groups is probably the key, but understanding, again, back to it, this is a home for somebody and not necessarily a place to stay for a couple of days on a vacation or something like that.
So we know that we're living in senior living and independent living and assisted living. We are working with folks and on their behalf to create that home environment. Where outside of their own apartment is kind of the favorite popular places for the residents? Where do they like to hang out, and what's important about those spaces? Alicia, can you help us with that?
Yes, I would love to. Eateries, as what's on the screen now, any dining experience is very popular for the residents. So we tend to create many different types of dining rooms, whether it's bistros or cafes, or wanting to get away from those terms as well and move into eateries and lounges, and then mixing up the type of seating arrangements in those spaces, but not to get too in depth in that. Some of the other spaces are the cards and the game rooms. Of course, that's always popular. Something that we're starting to see more of. It's been around for a while, even in Alzheimer's communities, believe it or not, but bars and lounges. So bars are always a very popular hit with the communities, and I think they will continue to be.
Should we be concerned that we're going to have tipping seniors when we look at bar stools and things
Right.
like that? Would you like to talk about what type of specifications are best for seniors in this type of environment?
Environments. Yes, we definitely typically would use counter bar stools, stools that do not swivel, those with arms. We try to stay away from the typical bar stool height. Still using those some in independent livings, but definitely probably 90% are counter stool height. Again, no swivel, and they must have arms on them. So it is easier to get in and out of. Another thing to be focused on are the stretchers themselves at the base of the counter stools or bar stools, and just making sure that the bar is not along the bottom in case the resident may have a hill or may put their foot within that bar stool that could cause a tripping getting out of it. So just paying mind of some of those characteristics of the stools and seating that you specify for those spaces is important.
And Laura, we seem to see a lot of arms on these chairs. Do we have to have arms on every chair in senior living?
You should have arms on all the chairs to assist the seniors in getting in and out. Yes.
It was it was funny, like Stevie, since we've been new to this realm, when I did our first tour about a year and a half ago of senior living facilities, we were talking about the bar, and a lot of people come in and they'll come in with their kids and like, well, mom and dad don't really like to drink, but as soon as the kids leave, the first thing they do is go to the bar. So the bars are very popular, and a lot of them are you bring your own, so you provide lockers for the residents because they don't always have liquor licenses. So you have to think about the bar operates a little differently in some instances where again, in a lot of residences there are no liquor licenses, so residents bring their own. They can have someone who pours for them at night. They have cocktail hour and things like that. It's a little different than designing for a hotel where you have a really major back bar and you're showing all the top shelf stuff. So it's it's more of a social environment.
I think it's a well-attended outing when they have, different type of cocktails too. I remember when my mom was living in senior living, and she would say, well, I've got to go down for happy hour. Got to go. I mean, I've never seen her get off the phone so quickly. So I think it is really much more popular than most people would think. And, there's no driving, so why not?
Why not?
Can we turn our attention to outdoor space? That's a really important part of senior living, and oftentimes we don't spend enough time on it. So I'd really like to talk about, and there are two different types of outdoor space. Really, it's the suburban and the urban, because we have so many senior living communities now in urban environments, but outdoor space is always something that you need to think about. David, you want to talk about the urban environment with regard to outdoor space?
Yeah, I'm gonna share Kevin's photograph so you can tag team me, because I don't have it finished. But this is a project we're working on now, which is an 18-story building in Atlanta. And there are, because it's a tower, the outdoor spaces are on upper levels. This is a project, Kevin, that you shared, and it's similar to what we're doing in terms of doing landscape terraces, outdoor pools, outdoor bistros on upper levels. So Kevin, you could talk a little bit about this, but it's not dissimilar to what we're seeing in multifamily residential in the city.
Yeah, not much more to say. That you just said that well. This has become a popular item that we're looking at right now in both urban and suburban. It's the little dog park where we can take the dogs out for a potty or a walk and safely do it without maybe hitting the streets, so to speak, to do it. I know that having a pet or a dog or a cat is really important to a lot of our seniors, and I know that over the many years they've allowed them in the building. So it's an important element that we start thinking about this. Where do they go, especially in an urban setting? The views out of this building in Seattle are absolutely amazing. On the top, you get this 360 of Mount Rainier, both Cascade and the Olympic Mountain Range, as well as the Puget Sound. And so you want to take advantage of that. This, I believe, is on the 6th floor we're looking at, or the 5th floor. And there is a 24th floor sky room as well. Something to think about that. There's lots of wind. You need to think about what you're putting out there and if it's locked down or not, and how easily it is moved to safety if it needs to be. Of course, the railing is always really important, but you don't want to get rid of the view. We also have an outdoor space for our memory care residents at this building as well.
That's not it. That is not where we're having.
Yeah, that's on the floor 2 below, I think, of this. But again, this was an incredible project that we finished up, and it's really, really beautiful. And these spaces are extremely great with the outdoor dining and just outdoor entertainment areas. It's important.
Yeah, and we're doing this.
Let's look at the suburban side of things too. That was an amazing urban representation. Here we are. We're in the suburbs. Alicia?
Yes, come over to the suburbs. With the suburban outdoor spaces, you have a little bit more of a footprint that you can work with. Definitely implementing outdoor grills and having some dining experiences out there, especially now that COVID is amongst us. They are definitely, residents and communities and operators are using the outdoor spaces a little bit more for outdoor dining. But I feel like the seating is pretty much the same, whether it's suburban or urban. It's just pretty much the footprint that changes a little bit.
Well, I think the dog park is certainly different. Look at how small it was in the urban environment and how large it was in the city. Dogs like to romp.
Sure.
I want to digress for a second. I see the miniature golf, and go back. There we go. And so it really begs the question about activities in senior living today. I think at one point we all thought that when seniors decided they were going into a senior living community, they were going to be playing bingo and bridge all the time. Can you each weigh in on what's happening in senior living today and what you need to design for, and if it's any different than bingo and bridge? Let's start with David.
Me? Yeah, I mean, we're thinking seniors are more active, and we're thinking about this next generation that's coming in. So we were just presenting the other day to a client, and it was like, also said, please don't just do the little putting green. Can you create more about people like to walk, they like to hike, they like to, do more active games with each other. So we're thinking of, from indoor to outdoor, how we how we kind of grow that. You know, so yeah, I was going to make a dirty joke, but I'll not do that.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. But yeah, and not just, I mean, really thinking about not just taking things for the you know, for the picture, but again, like, you know, I think this is Alicia's project, and in the pool, there's a lot more chairs around rather than chaise lounges. But people come out, they want to be outside. The other thing is that really, and what's beautiful about these images is these really engage the outdoor, and we're just talking about a renovation of a project where they didn't go outside because there was nowhere to go. And it's a project in Texas. And even in Texas, there's really great months of the year where you can be outside or be outside at night. So really activating and playing a game between the indoor and the outdoor spaces. You know,
And then what
extending.
happens when it's snowing and you have to go indoors? Laura, what are the people, you know, what are the residents doing to entertain themselves?
Well, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do it indoor. I guess New York is, as long as it's well ventilated with the COVID going on, they can still have family members coming in even in the winter. But with COVID, we just heard that residents were sitting in the doorways and they were playing Trivial Pursuit amongst each other down the hallway. So, I mean, I think they're getting creative and being able to do activities, but it is much more active, and it's not necessarily poker and bridge and Mexican train heaven.
Okay,
So,
so that's interesting. And we've seen this gorgeous pool. So clearly people are more active than maybe what was the common thought 20 years ago. So let's talk about the age for a second, because there are a lot of numbers floating out there, 55 plus, 70 plus. What is really the age that defines independent living today? Alicia?
Oh, that's a little difficult.
yeah.
We had an install this week, and the majority, I swear the majority of the residents were 80 to 93, and they were so active, very healthy. So I think it changes across the region. It's all ages right now. Some operators may, or communities, depending on the size and the region and what's available. Some residents may move in or stay a little bit longer than they should, and maybe they should move into assisted living, you know, sooner than they do. But I think the age range can be anywhere from 55 to 90.
Broad, that is a broad range. We have a question from our audience. Are there plans to create workshops for crafting, et cetera, so seniors can continue with hobbies like model railroads, et cetera? Laura?
Boy, that's a great question. I would think so, but I have not. How about if I can get back to maybe you, Phoebe, and we can filter that back
To
put
our
it on the webpage if you want.
Certainly, we can do that. And we can also post an answer on the website.
Yeah.
So you get back to me and then we can post that answer.
Okay.
We are looking at, yeah, Phoebe, and some of the projects we're looking at creating not just the quote craft room, but we have a room that's more of a gallery that people can paint in. We have a room that's more related to that we've seen workshops where people are at power tools. So that, you know, when we have the space, sometimes space is not always available, that we can kind of maybe more refine the space so it's tailored to a certain or a range of crafts. So whether it's woodworking or painting or craft making, that we can start to see how we can layer those in.
Yeah, I believe there's lots of organizations out there that actually you can reach out to within your own city for artists or for other types of crafts that are available you just call, and I think they can set up programs with the activities director at each community. I think there should be more and more of that. Of course, it's kind of, some of the activities may be based upon the residents that are there and their stories and what they enjoy doing. But I think there are a number of organizations in all cities around that would be happy to come in and do some workshops and whatnot. So if they're out there, we can definitely try to find some.
We
And I
just
think
had
it's
another question. My mother is 86 and still plays tennis and golf 2 times a week. Good for her. Are there areas for these activities for active seniors? How do you handle that? Do you outsource activities to golf courses nearby and tennis courts, or do some communities have that type of thing?
Depends on the community. There are communities out there that are on golf courses. You know, so it depends. Otherwise, yes, there's a lot of organized outings. If there's a group that they have a tennis club and they've got a group that would like to go play tennis, but there isn't a tennis court on premise.
Perfect.
Okay.
We're going to move back indoors now, but before we do, we have someone who is attending the webinar asked, we're seeing a ton of new design where they are moving the outdoor seating back and forth from inside to outside, or even where they modify rooms with sliding glass. Are we using a lot of the same furniture in and out and moving it? And is that a geographical situation, or can somebody speak to that, please?
I have seen that. I'm sorry, Alicia. Go ahead.
Well, we prefer not to move furniture pieces in and out. One, it's a lot of extra work on the staff. The durability of the furniture pieces, of course, the outdoor pieces are more designed and have the characteristics to stay outdoors and indoors. So we're not moving a lot in and out. It sounds like it really is. They may be creating outdoor environments and spaces where they don't currently have enough seating, so they're moving some furniture around that way. Are most definitely combining and have created or do create and design sunrooms and indoor spaces where we can open those up to the outdoor spaces as well. So then you've got one large space all together.
We have another question. These are great questions today. Keep them coming. What do you see as some of the most significant differences in what you are designing for today than, say, 10 years ago?
Well, if I might chime in, years ago, we didn't have fabrics that had the krypton or the moisture barrier backing, which is also really, really important when we're dealing with most assisted living and memory care. We were either reverse laminating or top laminating fabrics, and they would crack and they would scratch the resident's skin, and we'd have all sorts of issues with that. I believe more and more manufacturers out there are actually taking it seriously and designing the proper dimensions of furniture for our seniors. And so I think that's a big difference from 5 years ago, even until today. And as we learn more and more about how to better serve our seniors, I think we just evolve every day as well with better products and more efficient products for that population. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
That makes sense.
Technology is big too, Phoebe. I mean, with all the technology that is going on out there and in the communities, trying to make sure that the buildings that are older are Wi-Fi compatible to support all of that. There's a lot of exercise equipment that's now Wi-Fi enabled, so you can stream a running path or, you know, a walk next to a stream or those kinds of things. So
Right.
Technology is big.
Well, I would think that that would have to be updated so that people who are using, say, the wearable devices for safety or for steps and exercise and whatnot, can connect with their devices too. Certainly we didn't have all of that 10 years ago.
Right.
Let's move inside now and let's talk about something that is, I think, a pretty big category, and that is artwork. It has changed a lot. Certainly in the time I've been involved in senior living, which is coming up on 15 years. And I'd love for you all to weigh in on how it's changed, because I think it's pretty dramatic. Kevin, we'll start with you just because I'm looking at this extraordinary Chihuly piece of art.
Yeah, I mean, so this is in the downtown Seattle, of course, a little nod to Dale Chihuly being a Seattle native, and the art industry that's the glass art industry that's here in Seattle. You know, this serves a little bit as a chandelier as well as an art piece for this lobby, and really kind of set the tone for everything that this building really exemplifies in its interiors. You know, this was kind of a big deal for us to do this, and it really is quite incredible. You know, and throughout this building, we do have sort of their typical artwork down the corridor and in spaces, but there is a reason to bring in some higher end art, or just art that's more impactful in certain areas of the building. I believe that are more visual impacts, perhaps wayfinding impacts. That's kind of where I stand on the artwork. I think it's important to have some really nice pieces throughout the building, scattered with other thought-provoking, maybe less intriguing artwork just for conversation, you know, with all the residents as they walk the corridors, whatnot.
Laura, do you want to talk about what it used to be and what it is?
Well, it used to be kind of boring. You know, I mean, it was a lot of landscape that, I don't know, plus years ago. Alicia, is that you?
Yes, I was saying cherubs and angels and.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the one of the portfolios that is part of the Brookdale family had very Victorian pieces, so you know, very traditional. That's not the case anymore. There's more artwork that is photos, more purposeful for the area that the community is sitting in. So yeah, very different than 20 or more years ago.
The image on the right, Phoebe, is it's a Samsung TV, which is called the Frame. So it actually could be set up on an easel, so it's digital, so it can change out. You do video or changing images. There are some companies now that you can license, and they'll actually upload the art so it rotates. So it definitely is going the way that hospitality's gone, where you're putting more curated collections together for a property, and not just, again, it's not about decorating, it's about creating something that has quality. So like, you know, Kevin, what you guys did with Chihuly, some people will come and talk about, and they get excited about, and it's controversial too, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That is good. Well, with art and with more sophisticated and interesting art, certainly comes the lighting piece. And I know lighting's very important in senior living, in every aspect. And we should probably touch on the progress that has made, and where there's need for improvement. I constantly hear designers say we need more lighting. So this is your opportunity. Talk to us.
Who wants to take?
Okay, Alicia, talk to us.
Lighting is extremely important. I think in the past, just the incandescent lighting that was used tends to give off, or does give off, a warmth and a yellow feel or tint in the space. And that's not good for seniors or the aging eye, because you're getting that glare and that discoloration over your lens as you age. So that makes it more difficult for the aging population to be in these environments. One thing that we're running across, LEDs, of course, have been the big thing over the last several years. And as much as we love them, the higher foot candles of the LEDs are tending to cause problems as well, because it can be too cool or too bright. So having a good balance with that, LEDs have come a long way. They've had dimmable options for many years now. So one thing that I do suggest is making sure any of the spaces have dimmable accesses to those spaces, so you can adjust the lighting and the foot candles in that space.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
What? Oh, go ahead, David.
No. One thing I'm finding is that in this industry, there's not a lot of use of lighting designers. And
Right.
probably something like, oh, we use our engineer will calculate the light, the lumens, or the lighting supplier. I'm like, it's a real opportunity to really bring in lighting design. It's a really kind of a profession and a skill that's needed, and not just because there's a lot of, I think, lack of understanding of to point out what in terms of something we just said of how lighting can improve the environment and how best to design. Like this is Kevin. This is I'm pointing out your project again, but there's some thought that was done in terms of the architectural and the decorative lighting here, and it's not just high hats in the ceiling.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Laura,
Yeah. The add on to Alicia's comment. I mean, with the foot candles and then the color temperatures. If the color temperature is high to like a 5,000 to a 6,100, it's going to be really blue, and it's very, very distorting for the fizzes that are in the community, and it can be an agitator to residents that occupy the space. So thinking about going through an airport and how bright and blue that light is that someplace that you want to live in? So keeping in mind that it's still a home for those residents, there's a balance, and we need to have the decorative light, we need to have the purposeful light, and the task light where needed.
Thank you. Any other questions on lighting, please write into us. We've already fielded a couple of them, and we appreciate these questions. We're going to talk a little bit more about just creating that interior space. And is it reflected the same way from geographic area one to another, or does the space actually change per geography? Kevin?
I think that's a really important question. I know that in the hospitality world, they do that a little bit. I think about this question a lot because I do, in my designs, I do reach out and try to find some historical significance in the areas that we're in, or just what the geographic area is, and try to implement some of those elements into the interior furnishings or artwork. And working with our architects, we also try to do that within our interior finishes. However, I don't have pictures of the Space Needle all over in my house. And so you have to kind of find a good balance with that and do a nod potentially to the area, or something that is of significance to maybe what the residents could experience, or perhaps something that will bring upon a memory versus the obvious thing that I live where the Space Needle is. And so it's important to recognize where they are, but I don't think we need to theme it out to be that way. If that answers the question, but you know, too much can also just be like, now I'm at the Hampton Inn in Orlando, Florida.
Right, right. Which really works for business travelers, because there have been times that I've been really grateful to have an image that said where I was after endless travel. So that is not the case, however, with residents in the communities. I want to move on to experience, because I think that's really important for a lot of the folks who want to move in to the senior living, assisted living arena. And I wondered, Laura, can you talk to us about insight in specifying for independent living community, and really how it's vastly different from that of hospitality? What are those key facts to really connect with?
The size of the furniture is a big factor. It can't be too low, can't be too deep. We need to pay attention to the pitch of the back. We talked about arms earlier, and really we need to have arms on everything. It's hard for seniors to get in and out, especially when it's low and it's deep and it's soft. So the
Is there a
cushion
criteria for that, for the height and the seat depth and the arm height? I just got a question from somebody who wanted to know specifically about seating specs.
So typically you want to stay between, say, 18 and a half and right around 20. Maybe you can push 20 and a half, 21, but the little, even just a half an inch can make a really big difference for a senior. So when you're thinking about the sizes of pieces and you're thinking that it's not a big deal, it's only a half inch, it should be fine. I will tell you, one of the projects that I did in Michigan, the seat height was a half inch, and the repercussions from the residents made me go back and we had to reupholster all of those pieces. Within the time of those pieces being reupholstered, the residents got used to the half an inch because it was a really old chairs that they don't even make them that short anymore. So they were thankful that they were higher, but there's a formulary. If the height of the seat is taller, the depth shouldn't necessarily be a typical depth. So there's a formulary to that. We can put some stuff on the website for guidance.
Oh, that would be terrific. If we could have that to put up on the Ageless Living Collaborative website, that'd be great. And then folks who have asked about seating specifically, they'll be able to get more of their questions answered there. That'd be really terrific. And
there's specific manufacturers that deal with senior living furniture. So I would really key in to those manufacturers versus trying to create your own and do custom.
Yeah, I agree. There's plenty out there that do the proper specifications. I have sort of a testimonial too. This was a renovation done years ago, and they had some really soft residential style furniture, and we brought in this new sort of firm seat with arms. It was, I think, like 18 or 19 inches high seat height, 20 inches seat depth. And a resident came up to me and she was smiling from ear to ear, and she said, I was able to get out of that sofa all by myself.
That's
And
so
I basically just did this and I said, my work here is done.
Yeah,
well,
it's
even
home,
the
and they don't want to. When it's not appropriate, they get stuck and then they feel trapped. So I mean, it's their home. They should be able to move around the spaces at will when they want, and not feel like they have to have assistance. That's really degrading. You know, it's not dignified.
there's a Netflix series called Gracie and Frankie, and Jane Fonda kind of illustrates that by not being able to get out of the sofa, and really brings that point home. They really touch on a lot of the points that we are making in the various webinars that we've been doing recently, and they really articulate it quite well. Does new build have a different feel to it for you all versus renovating and refreshing? What are some of the challenges that you encounter with that new build as opposed to a renovation as opposed to a new build?
Well, if I can take that one just initially, you know, I think with a renovation, you may not always get the kind of budget that you have to build a new building. I mean, these new buildings can cost anywhere up to $20+ million just for the build itself, and on top of it, and then adding in everything else. Where renovation, they may only have a couple hundred, $500 million to do the renovation. I think you can start from the beginning and create what you want without disrupting the residents already in the community. And I think that's the biggest, maybe the biggest drawback is how do you execute a renovation and still have residents live there and not disrupt them so much that it really can cause move outs or just really lots of frustration. I don't know, Laura, if you want to go on with that, or whoever.
Yeah, I think it's hard to It's hard with, depending on the age of the community that's being renovated, there could be spaces already framed up and you have to repurpose and like Kevin said, you have a limited budget. A couple pictures back, that was a renovation. The one more, that one. And it's very bright now. Looks a lot different than it did originally, but sometimes you've got really good bones. This community, I believe, is maybe 12 or 13 years old, but if you're working on a renovation and the property is 20, 25, even 30 years, it's a different footprint, and you have to put a lot of money into it in order to reposition it.
You know,
Yeah, I would add that.
I was thinking about Kevin's comment about doing these renovations while residents are living through them, just like any of us would live through a remodeling in our homes, and how you have to work around that. And it's very different than in a hotel. You know, they can take a floor, you know, off for the duration of the reno, or in a casino where they just kind of keep on working even though people are playing at the tables across the aisle. Can you speak to what some of those challenges are and how you overcome them?
Lots of communication. Lots of communication. Harden our dust. Here's what it's going to look like. The independent living will do renderings so that they can see what the space is going to look like. Lots of communication regarding timeline. Here's what's happening this week. Here's what's going to happen next week. We plan on finishing it up on this day. It's really communication.
That, and I'll speak on that too. Staging areas, for example, when a dining room is being renovated, that's biggest, one of the biggest spaces as far as interruptions. But so staging and thinking through everything, and maybe having dining now in the multi-purpose area, and serving the residents that way. But definitely scheduling, timelines, communication, as Laura said, all of those things are drastically important to keep the residents happy.
Right.
And you have to understand some of these renovations can take a few years, and it's so draining on the residents.
Yeah. And the associates. Yep.
Right. Like for any of us, I think. You know, I want to really talk about an element that I think is ubiquitous with most people involved in senior living, and that is passion. David, you're the relative newcomer to the senior living side of things. And I'd really like you to help address if you found that to be true and how. And then I'd love for each one of the panelists to kind of talk about how they got into the business, because I'm kind of thinking there's a passion piece involved. David?
Okay. Yes. You know, it's very interesting because when you design a hotel, as Laura or Kevin or Alicia said, that you know you're designing a place someone's going for a night or 2 nights or a week. So you know the experience is it's a short, you know, it's a stay. It becomes a memory. These are people's homes, so you're really directly affecting, any move you do is going to affect their overall experience. So you really have to have, I mean, not only passion for it, but compassion for people and for the people that are there, and be able to project yourself into their experience and project yourself into people you know who are their age or how you might feel. So I think it takes people who not only have passion but compassion for others and have empathy and can feel other people on. Otherwise, you can't get into the mindset. I mean, it's very hard for us to project how we'll be when we're 80 years old. But if we can try people on and have empathy for people, I think it's super important. Otherwise, you know, there's not a reason. It's not about going to this business to make money. I mean, it's a different drive, and I'm finding it very, very rewarding to create places where people are living.
Laura?
Oh boy. So senior living, I knew I wanted to do when I was a sophomore in college, because of a senior living class that they had at that college. My grandma had Alzheimer's and passed away from it a long time ago. But the impact that you have on somebody's life without it being residential design is really rewarding. So the passion, you have to have the passion.
Right. That's what
Yeah.
I think. Alicia?
Same here. So I had not experienced a relative or a grandparent having Alzheimer's. I interned actually at an operator, a privately owned small operator, and completely fell in love with it. It was a great mix of residential, hospitality, healthcare, everything rolled up into one. I've done custom residential, healthcare, and contract design, but senior living adds that other layer of, as David had mentioned, just empathy and caring for others. And as Laura mentioned, you are designing.
Alicia, you froze.
As you're saying, you're designing people's homes.
Not
I
just
think
for the
so.
residents, but absolutely. So it's just all the way around. It's just a great environment to design for, and hearing the operators and the marketing teams just give you feedback afterwards on what a great job and how the community changed so much is just so rewarding. So
Yeah,
that's
the appreciation is, it's overwhelming sometimes.
Well, I know,
I think
Kevin, you have shared some stories about your conversations with residents during and after installations or renovations. And I do love hearing all of these stories. I think that it's very clear that everybody really enjoys that personal contact. I'm going to ask you, David, do you recall having those kind of conversations in a hotel with guests ever?
Not really.
You don't have
Occasionally.
to answer. We're gonna move along to, why hospitality design is moving more and more into senior living, and kind of everybody's thoughts on the hospitality design elements in senior living. Clearly, we're taking a lot of that wonderful design from hospitality, but not all of it fits. So, David, you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, I went back to the first image because I thought it was a good comparison. Actually, I threw myself under the bus on the one on the left. It's a hotel we designed in Boston, and it's next to BU, and this beautiful project that Kevin his company just finished up in Seattle. And there is, there is a subtle difference. I mean, where I saw senior living was where I saw kind of luxury hotels about 30 years ago. And there was a lot of similarity in terms of the way things looked. And now if you look at the right, you'll see this is, a very modern, more contemporary direction. But people want more choice. But again, to everyone's point, we keep saying it's people's homes. The property on the left, which is a hotel, is a 5-star hotel, and it's themed for BU, but it's not a place where someone who lives in Boston, I don't think it wants to live. And I think that it's somewhere, if you're visiting, you want to stay. And it's a very successful hotel that we did. On the right, it's someone's home. It still feels like it's Seattle without hitting it over your head that it's Seattle. And again, if you look at the variety of projects in here, you see a lot of choice. And I think what you're starting to see is more choice and variety. And again, because you turned 80 years old doesn't mean you have the same taste as, the next person. I grew up in a house where my parents were very modern, contemporary, and I have a mid-80s mom who still likes to live very 80s, very like contemporary, not 80s.
Mhm.
And so what you're seeing is a range of stuff which is addressing different lifestyles, and it also addresses the question that was earlier about activists. My mom plays tennis. She might go to a tennis community or a golf community. Or there was a place we were looking at, comps in Portland last week, and their community has really amazing hiking trails and is more related to environmental issues. So I think that's what we're going to start to see, just like where we saw lifestyle hotels, lifestyle communities are starting to emerge in the senior living category.
I have a question from one of our viewers who wants to know, could there be a business opportunity of less performing hotels getting converted into senior living? This is not the first time that question has been brought up, but this is the first time we're going to attempt to answer it. Who would like to go first?
I can take a stab at it. So taking a hotel and turning it into senior living, you have to figure out what the occupant is going to be. What kind of building is it going to turn into? And you have to be able to take some of those rooms and knock them out and turn them into common area spaces. So
It's
lots
more
of
community-like.
depends on the
Right.
municipality.
Independent livings, it's a little bit more easier, but again, it's
Yep.
most definitely is this a business opportunity, but it really does depend on a few different factors. A smaller scale or smaller footprint of a hotel could become an IL boutique senior living environment. If it's going to be an assisted living, like Laura, you've got a plan to knock down some spaces, some walls, and create areas for some nursing staff to be there. So it definitely is an opportunity. It's just creating that right in a senior living environment that will work in that footprint that you would be working with.
I'm sure that will make people happy to hear. I'm going to go back to the questions before we go to our next topic because we want to try and answer all of them. Opinions on the ongoing debate of flooring, carpet versus hard versus resilient, especially in dining and eateries. I know we've talked about that internally, so go, Alicia.
So I think there was a fitness area that David showed a few minutes ago or seconds ago.
There we go.
Spaces like that we really want to make sure that it stays clean and dirt and grime and all of that is not, and sweat and whatever is not absorbed in the carpet. I think it's a better application to use a solid surface or a resilient flooring. Dining rooms, it's always a toss up. You definitely want to keep noise down. So if you've got very high ceilings in a dining room, it is better to have insets of carpet throughout that dining room, and then have borders or paths that are designed with the resilient or luxury vinyl plank. In this space for the entry, that can be very loud, but they put and inserted the carpet inset, so that's going to absorb the sound. So it's really about the environment that you're designing in and trying to.
In our post-COVID world or during COVID, we're not past it yet. Is there a new thinking on that? I know when people started talking about cleaning, all of a sudden there was some conversation about, are we still looking at carpet or are we looking at an LVT world? Can you shed some light on that, Laura? I know you have some strong opinions on that.
So, having the flooring, yes. So there's been lots of conversations about everything's going to turn to vinyl. It's going to be vinyl on the floor. We're going to have vinyl on the chairs. It's going to be all hardscape, very agitating and noisy for somebody's home.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't crawling around on the floors. So I have a little opinion regarding that. the conversation regarding cleaning from carpet to a vinyl plank or a vinyl sheet good, there's multiple steps with each. And I think it's a visual, I look clean, or I think I'm clean because I can't see the dirt. And with carpet, you don't know because you can't necessarily see it.
Mhm.
That being said, the vinyl plank can get tacky when it's not cleaned appropriately. There's a lot of times when there's not rinsing of chemicals that are potentially put on it. Some of the like the UV lighting that we're talking about for COVID, you know, they're still trying to figure out how much damage is it going to do to materials. So whether I'm window treatments, I'm a fabric on a chair, I'm the fabric on the floor, i.e. the carpet, what is that going to do? They're talking about if you put your mask in a UVC light kit, you can only do it 4 times and then it starts to turn brittle. So I think there's more to come when it comes to the COVID and any other diseases that potentially will come in the future. But to just go all the way to the other end and not have carpet in the conversation, I do not think that that's the right move.
Correct.
I don't think
That will
that's
be music to the ears of all the carpet folks, let me tell you. David and Kevin, would you like to add anything to the flooring conversation?
Well, we've gone to doing no carpet in our dining rooms, and there's a picture of one of our dining rooms in this. It's not the floral kind of back on the chairs. They're 2-story hard surface floor, hard surface walls, hard surface ceiling. This one, and and it's very loud for our residents, and it's been an issue. And not that I want to admit fault that we're doing this, but we changed this out as for cleaning. They thought this could be kept cleaner than carpet. And now we have another situation where now we can't hear our neighbor across the table. And we're trying to fix that with our architects now, is I think implementing some sort of ceiling acoustic panels up above to keep this down. I really prefer the carpet in our dining rooms. I think it feels more residential in a way. The excuse that it can't be kept clean, I think, is just an excuse to not do our job properly. If we implemented the staff to do the proper cleaning or pick up after each meal, and it could be kept clean. Also, the darker the carpet, it hides the stains better. Well, again, like Laura said, we don't really want to hide the stains because that just creates bacteria. How about we just do our job, keep it clean, right? And we can have these nice light colored grays and beige carpets that we're seeing out there now that that I just sort of cringe over, thinking, how are they going to, but anyway, it can be done. It can be done. Hard surfaces is a great element to throw in as well. We just want to make sure our transitions are always smooth and flat, but it also brings some nice differentiation to space as well. So there was a picture here of like a little cafe area that had hard surface with carpet around it, which I thought was real sweet. That it kind of defines the space again without having to create the space with walls and whatnot. So like even like in our project with the Trujillo chandelier, I guess we'll refer to that way, is that we have the tile around the carpet, but it defines the space. So I think there's a positive with that as well, than one or the other. Hard surface is slippery when it's wet. I know carpet can be slippery when it's wet. I think we just kind of have to go with the lesser of 2 evils on that, and agree that we have more work to do on the in the building itself with keeping it maintained.
And one of our Ageless Living Collaborative members just added, flooring is only as good as the education provided to the staff, which I think needs to
Amen.
be forward.
Amen on that.
Thank you, Dale. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping because we're almost at the end of our hour. I'd like to remind everybody that they can go to the agelesslivingcollaborative.org site for this and previous webinars, as well as a glossary of terms for senior living, assisted living, memory care, and more. And that we will continue this series with part 2 on October 7th. And we will conclude the series on October 21st. This is a great opportunity for you to send questions, and you can certainly go right to the website and pose those questions, and we can try and answer them for you in the next 2 segments of the Senior Living 101 series. We did not really get to a lot of assisted living this week, so look for us to bring you more information on the assisted living of the equation in the next session. I think we've really concentrated mostly on independent living here. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you to our amazing panelists, leaders in senior living. We're so happy that you have joined us and provided so much great information. And we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.